I was just a teenager when I got kicked out of the house. All because of some nasty lies my twin brother made up. At the time I couldn't wrap my head around why my parents believed him so easily, but looking back, maybe I always knew they were just looking for a reason. Years later, after cutting me off and acting like I didn't exist, they showed back up in my life, but not to make amends. No, they came around asking for money, suddenly proud of the daughter they'd abandoned now that she was doing well. I'm 29 now, and I've built a good life for myself. But growing up? That was a whole different story. I have a twin brother, and although we were born on the same day, raised under the same roof, we lived in two completely different worlds. From as early as I can remember, our parents treated him like he was some sort of golden child destined for greatness, and I was just the extra kid they were stuck with. I was active, outgoing, loved sports, and enjoyed being around people. But to them, all of that made me a troublemaker or a distraction. They wanted someone serious and studious, basically a carbon copy of my brother. And since I wasn't that, I was constantly labeled as the problem. They were always putting us side by side, measuring everything I did against him. And it didn't matter how hard I tried. I could never measure up in their eyes. That kind of constant comparison chips away at you, especially when you're just a kid trying to figure yourself out. Our birthdays were always a harsh reminder of how differently we were treated. Every year my brother got these big, fancy parties with decorations, tons of friends, gifts stacked on the table, you name it. Meanwhile, I was lucky if I even got a cake. I'd watch the whole thing unfold, sitting quietly on the sidelines like I didn't belong there. He had sleepovers all the time, his friends practically living at our house. But me? I wasn't even allowed to invite anyone over. It was like I didn't deserve to have fun or be seen. Honestly, I hated my childhood. I know that's a strong word, but I really did. It was lonely, confusing, and just plain unfair. The only person in the family who ever made me feel loved was my grandmother. She always brought warmth when she visited. She'd show up with my favorite chocolate and sometimes slip a few dollars into my hand when no one was looking. She didn't say much, but her kindness spoke volumes. For a while, she was the only reason I felt seen. But as we got older, the favoritism got worse. It morphed into something cruel. My parents didn't just prefer my brother, they actively targeted me. They'd make fun of my grades, roll their eyes at my hobbies, and act like everything I did was a waste of time. I tried so hard to make them proud, but it never seemed to matter. Even when I did well in school or succeeded in sports, they brushed it off like it wasn't good enough. Meanwhile, my brother could mess up and still be praised like he was perfect. At one point, I really started shining in athletics. I had a shot at making a competitive team, and for the first time I felt like I had something of my own to be proud of. But they shut it down. They said sports were a waste of time and that I needed to focus on my studies just like my brother. That decision crushed me. It wasn't just about the activities. It was about having something that made me feel valuable. And they took that away. Then came sophomore year, one of the worst moments of all. I got grounded again, and this time, it was for something so ridiculous it still makes me shake my head. I had Snapchat on my phone. That was it. I wasn't sneaking out or getting into trouble. I just wanted to stay in touch with my friends like every other teenager. But my parents saw it as some huge betrayal, like I'd broken some sacred rule. They stormed into my room, screaming and throwing things, yanked the door off its hinges, and told me I didn't deserve privacy anymore. It was pure chaos. I stood there in shock, not even able to defend myself. And while all that was happening, my brother didn't say a word. He just watched and smirked. Instead of helping or sticking up for me, he used every opportunity to make things worse. The way our parents treated me gave him power, and he loved it. He'd lie about me constantly, accusing me of things I never did just to get me in trouble and keep the spotlight off himself. If something went missing, he'd point the finger at me. And of course our parents believed him. Why wouldn't they? In their eyes, I was always the one causing problems anyway. At school, he took things even further. He'd mock me in front of people, talk about how weird I looked or how I dressed. It was humiliating. But even through all of that, I somehow managed to build a solid group of friends. I liked people and I liked connecting with them. My brother didn't have that. He was quiet, socially awkward, and it clearly bothered him that I had something he didn't: acceptance. That resentment exploded on our 15th birthday. For some reason, none of his friends showed up to his party. I still don't know what happened or why they bailed, but I remember the silence in the house that day. Meanwhile, my friends surprised me by taking me out for ice cream. It was simple, but it meant the world to me. And when I got home, my brother was fuming. That moment flipped a switch in him. He wanted revenge. So he started spreading rumors, telling people at school that I was abusive. He'd go around saying I beat him at home and used our parents' favoritism against him. I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. He didn't just talk, he acted. He started hurting himself, giving himself bruises and black eyes so he could walk around showing them off like evidence. When people asked what happened, he said it was me. And when our parents noticed, he told them it was nothing, just football with his friends. But the damage was done. His lies started to spread like wildfire. The more people saw those fake injuries, the more they believed him. Eventually, even some of my own friends started to question me. I noticed the way they looked at me started to change little by little. Things started changing at school, and not in a way I could ignore. Friends who used to smile and chat with me in the hallways suddenly started avoiding eye contact. Group hangouts that I used to be part of were happening without me, and nobody even bothered to invite me anymore. It was like someone flipped a switch overnight. I went from feeling accepted and understood to being treated like a stranger. And not just any stranger, but one people were wary of. The girl with the anger issues. The one supposedly violent toward her own brother. Eventually, I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. So one day, I got up the nerve to ask my old best friend what was going on. We'd been close since grade school, so I thought maybe she'd be honest. And she was. What she told me made my stomach turn. My brother had been going around telling people horrible things, making up stories, inventing lies that made me sound like some kind of monster. According to him, I was violent, mean, and completely unstable. I stood there in disbelief. Hearing that from her felt like the floor had dropped out beneath me. I knew he'd never really liked me, but this was next-level betrayal. I never imagined someone who shared my face, my twin, would go so far just to destroy how people saw me. These weren't petty rumors anymore. He was painting me as someone I didn't even recognize. That same day after school, I confronted him. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I cornered him and demanded to know why he was doing this to me. His reaction still haunts me. He barely looked at me, didn't even flinch. I begged him to stop, to take it all back, to quit spreading lies. But all he did was smirk and say I deserved to rot alone. I didn't even know how to respond. His face, the coldness in his voice, it actually scared me. I thought about going to my parents, but deep down I knew they'd never believe me. They never had. In their eyes, he could do no wrong, and I was always the troublemaker. The isolation started closing in. It hurt. Especially because I'd always been someone who loved connecting with people. But now the friendships I worked hard to build were crumbling one by one. All because of his jealousy and lies. And it wasn't just students anymore. Teachers started acting differently too. You could see it in their eyes. Some of them would glance at me like I was this ticking time bomb. Others barely acknowledged me at all. I felt like I was stuck in this twisted version of reality where my entire identity had been replaced with a villainous version made up by my own brother. The rumors kept growing, twisting, taking on a life of their own. What started as teenage gossip had become something much bigger, something dangerous. Then the day came that I feared most. The principal found out. Someone must have reported the rumors because I got called into the office along with my brother and our parents. I remember sitting there in that small, quiet room, heart pounding in my chest, hands clenched in my lap, hoping, just hoping he'd finally tell the truth. But instead he did what he always did, lied. He looked the principal dead in the eyes and said everything was true. He accused me of bullying him, hitting him when no one was watching, lashing out because I couldn't handle not being the favorite. I sat there frozen as he spun that entire story like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. It was cruel, calculated, and terrifying. My mom started crying, holding on to him like he was some fragile hero for finally speaking up. My dad stood there, gently rubbing his back, telling him he was brave and promising to protect him from now on. I tried to speak, tried to explain that it was all fake, that he made everything up. But no one was listening. It was like screaming into a void. My voice didn't matter. Their minds were already made up. The principal turned to me, his expression hard, and told me the school wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior. He said bullying, especially within families, was unacceptable and came with serious consequences. I pleaded with him, tears in my eyes, trying to explain it was all a lie. But my brother kept his cool, insisting I was violent, unpredictable, and cruel. The more he spoke, the more my mother cried. Her eyes were full of blame every time she looked at me. I wanted to shake them, to scream that it wasn't true, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. I was trapped in this story he created, and no one wanted to hear the real version. Eventually, the principal laid down his decision. I was being suspended for 10 days. Not because there was proof, there wasn't any, but because he wanted to set an example. He said it would show others that bullying wouldn't be tolerated, no matter who it came from. I sat there in disbelief as the tears started pouring down my face. I begged him to reconsider, telling him again and again that I hadn't done anything wrong. But he just shook his head. When the meeting ended, my parents couldn't get out of there fast enough. They were angry more at the embarrassment than the actual situation, and dragged me out of that office like I was some criminal. I tried to stop, tried to say something, anything that might make them see reason. But they weren't interested. Not in the truth. Not in me. As we left the school, I felt crushed, completely drained from the mix of shame, disbelief, and heartbreak. I sat in silence the whole ride, trying to process what had just happened. When we got home, I thought maybe I'd be able to talk to them, maybe they'd calm down and realize what a mistake they were making. But instead, things took an unexpected turn. Without a word, my dad started packing up my stuff. He grabbed my clothes, shoved things into a suitcase, and didn't even look me in the eye. I stood there stunned. I didn't understand what was happening. My mom looked confused too and asked him why he was doing that. His answer? He barked that he couldn't allow me to stay in the same house as my brother. That was it. No discussion. No questions. I broke down right there in the hallway. I dropped to my knees, sobbing, begging my brother to tell them the truth. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd have some sliver of a conscience. But he didn't. He just stood there, completely unmoved, almost smug, like he'd won some kind of sick game. My dad kept throwing my things into the suitcase and dragged it into the foyer. I clung to his leg, crying so hard I could barely breathe, still pleading with him not to do this. But it didn't matter. His words were cold. He told me a bully didn't deserve to live in his house. Then he said he'd call his mother, my grandmother, to come pick me up if she cared that much. My heart shattered. I couldn't believe this was real. One minute I was a high school student trying to survive the school day, and the next I was being thrown out of my own home like a criminal. My things were scattered across the floor and I stood there, disoriented and lost, surrounded by everything I owned in the same place I had called home my entire life. Eventually my grandmother arrived. She wasted no time. She calmly walked inside, gathered up all my things, and helped me carry everything to her car. When we got to the passenger seat, she helped me in and made sure I was buckled up before turning and walking straight back to the house. She rang the doorbell, and when my dad opened it, she let him have it. She didn't hold back. She was furious and made it clear she wasn't going to tolerate what had just happened. Her voice was firm, louder than I'd ever heard before, as she told him that if he ever came near me again or tried to make contact, she wouldn't hesitate to call the police or even CPS. She said that what he did wasn't just cruel, it might even be illegal. My mom tried to shift the blame onto me, acting like I had brought this on myself. But my grandma wasn't having it. She shut that down fast, defending me with everything she had. She made it clear I was just a kid and no child deserves to be thrown away like that. That was the first time I saw how strong she really was. In that moment, I didn't feel invisible anymore. For the first time, someone stood up for me. Someone truly believed me. We drove away from the house and I stared out the window, knowing I'd probably never go back there again. That home, the only one I'd ever known, was gone to me now. I can't really put into words how that felt. The pain was deep, almost surreal. That night, I lay in bed in my grandma's house, crying until I couldn't cry anymore. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted the whole thing to be a bad dream. Eventually, I told my grandmother everything, what my brother had done, how long it had been going on, the lies, the rumors, all of it. She was shocked, but more than that, she was supportive. She told me she believed every word I said, and it meant the world to me. After everything, I finally had someone on my side. When the 10-day suspension ended, going back to school felt like walking straight into a nightmare. Every hallway felt hostile. I could feel people staring, whispering behind my back. The rumors hadn't died down, they'd only grown. My classmates looked at me differently now. Their eyes were filled with judgment and suspicion. And my brother? He didn't say a word to me. He acted like I didn't exist. He'd built this little circle of people who believed his version of things. They treated him like some poor victim, praising him for being so strong. And me? I was labeled the aggressor, the outcast. Every time I tried to explain myself, to tell my side, no one wanted to listen. It was like talking to a wall. The damage had already been done. I became completely isolated. No friends. No trust. Just me trying to get through each day without breaking down. I'd walk from class to class with my head down, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and head straight home after school. The loneliness was suffocating. And through it all, my parents never once called. Not to check on me. Not to ask how I was doing. Nothing. My grandmother tried her best to lift me up. She'd remind me again and again that this wasn't my fault, that one day I'd be okay. I clung to her words, even when I didn't fully believe them. Somehow I managed to graduate with decent grades. I didn't walk away from high school with memories I wanted to keep, but I did leave with hope. College felt like a fresh start. And when I finally got there, moved into my dorm, unpacked and sat on that tiny mattress, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I was free. No one breathing down my neck. No one constantly judging or comparing me. No one looking for reasons to tear me down. I could just be myself. I made new friends. Real friends. People who liked me for who I was, not who someone else said I was. And even though the scars from home were still there, emotional ones mostly, I slowly began to heal. I focused on school, embraced the freedom, and told myself that from here on out, things were going to be different. During college, something unexpected happened that completely changed the course of my life. I discovered I had a real knack for content writing. Deep down, I'd always dreamed of being a writer. But back then, I didn't think it was something I could realistically turn into a career. I'd convinced myself that it wasn't stable enough or that people like me didn't get to follow dreams like that. So I pushed the idea aside. Still, I needed some extra cash while I was in school, and writing was something I was good at. So I figured, why not give freelance writing a shot? I signed up on a few freelance platforms, half expecting nothing to come of it. But slowly I started landing jobs, real ones, from some surprisingly well-known clients. With every project, my confidence grew. I kept track of everything, building a portfolio bit by bit. It wasn't just side income anymore. It was becoming a foundation. And through all of that, I never once had to ask my parents for help. Not a single dollar. By the time I graduated, I realized I didn't need a corporate job to feel secure. I already had something solid, my freelance writing career. The relationships I'd built with clients over the years were strong. They trusted me, and in turn they kept bringing me onto new projects. I was doing well, better than I ever thought possible. Eventually, I reached the point where I could take this full time. And with that came something I hadn't even dared to dream about before: freedom. With my work being remote, I had the flexibility to travel, and I embraced that fully. I started moving from place to place, living like a digital nomad, working from cafes, small rentals, and beautiful little corners of the world I never thought I'd get to see. Travel wasn't just an adventure. It was healing. Each new city, each new experience slowly helped me shed the weight of my past. It wasn't easy. I had to budget carefully, plan ahead, and take a leap of faith more than once. But it was worth it. I saw so much of the world, and even now there's still so much more I want to explore. The only person I truly stayed connected to through it all was my grandmother. She was the closest thing I had to real family. I loved her more than I could ever say. She was sad when I finally moved out and began living more independently, but she understood why I had to. And even with my hectic schedule, I made time for her. I'd visit on weekends whenever I could. We'd share quiet meals together or sit on the porch and talk for hours. Sometimes about old memories, sometimes just about life. Those weekends meant the world to me. I'd help her out around the house, run errands with her, or join her for peaceful walks in the park. It was our little ritual. And even after everything I'd been through, those small moments gave me the peace I hadn't known growing up. Recently, I wrapped up one of the biggest projects of my career. I can't mention the brand, but let's just say it was a major name, and the opportunity came with a lot of responsibility. I wrote their blog content, product descriptions, and helped polish their entire web presence. When the project was done, I reached out to the team and asked if they'd leave reviews on my freelance profiles. They were more than happy to do so. I took screenshots of the best feedback and posted a few highlights on Instagram. It felt like a milestone, something I wanted to share and celebrate. Pretty quickly, the post started gaining attention. Other freelance writers congratulated me. Some even reposted it to their stories. People I'd never met started messaging me, asking for help with their websites and writing projects. It was surreal. For the first time, strangers were noticing me, not because of rumors or lies, but because of the work I'd put in. Even some of my extended relatives saw the posts and reached out to say they were proud of me. That was a weird feeling, hearing from people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly realizing I was doing well. And then something I never expected happened. I got a message from my old college principal. He'd seen one of my posts through mutual connections and said he was impressed by my journey. He asked if I'd come back to the college and give a talk about content writing, how to build a career from scratch and make it work in the digital age. First I panicked. Public speaking has never been my thing. I'd always gotten nervous talking in front of crowds, but this felt important. So I said yes. Standing in front of a room full of students, looking into their hopeful, curious eyes, I felt something shift inside me. I told them about the rough days, about surviving without support, about building a career from scratch when no one believed in you. And to my surprise, I wasn't nervous, I was proud. For the first time, I felt like everything I went through had meaning, like I could turn pain into purpose. Clips from that seminar ended up getting shared around on Facebook. People related to it. They messaged me thanking me for being honest. Some said it gave them hope. And that recognition, it hit differently. It wasn't about fame or validation. It was about finally being seen for who I really was. Just last week, I was invited to be on a local news segment. The topic was the benefits of content writing as a career. And they asked me to share my journey with the viewers. I was nervous but excited too. On the show, I talked about the grind, the importance of building relationships with clients, and how a single appreciation post could sometimes open doors you never imagined. Being able to share my story with a bigger audience felt empowering. After the episode aired, I posted a few clips on my Instagram. I was proud, plain and simple. And once again, the response was overwhelming. Friends, acquaintances, even more relatives began reaching out, congratulating me. It turned out that many of them had no idea how far I'd come, especially since my parents never spoke about me. In fact, some didn't even know I was working with major brands or being interviewed on TV. Word started spreading through the family pretty fast after that news segment aired. I wasn't actively trying to make waves. I just shared the clips like I always did, proud of what I'd accomplished. But apparently, someone must have sent it to my parents because a few days later, while I was working on a new project, I noticed something strange once I finally took my phone off silent. I had 6 missed calls, all from my mom. At first, I just stared at the screen. I hadn't heard from her in what felt like forever. Years, actually. There had been complete silence between us for so long that I couldn't even begin to guess why she was calling now. I was half tempted to ignore it, but curiosity got the best of me. So I called back. She answered right away. I asked if something had happened, if everything was okay. And instead of any real concern, she jumped straight into congratulating me. I could hear my dad in the background too. Before I knew it, he was on the line asking about my life, how things were going, what I'd been up to. It was a little jarring, honestly. I answered them out of politeness, still confused by their sudden interest. But then the conversation took a turn. They started asking questions that made my stomach turn. How much I was earning, whether I was doing really well. I told them plainly that it wasn't any of their business. My dad laughed it off and said, "Come on, we're family. No need to be shy with us." I just said I was doing fine financially and left it at that. And that's when my mom started in with the whole, "Life's been hard" speech. She said things hadn't been easy since they retired, that the house was falling apart and needed renovations, but they didn't have the money to fix it. I stayed quiet, sensing where this was heading. Then she said something like, "After watching your interview, we felt inspired. Maybe you could help us out." Then came my dad, chiming in, "You're doing great now. It's only right to share your success with the family. We really need this and it would mean a lot." I sat there stunned. I asked them flat out if they were serious, asking me for money after all these years of silence, after everything they put me through. It blew my mind. I told them I appreciated the congratulations, but no, I wasn't going to help them. That's when my mom snapped. She started calling me selfish, even going as far as to call me a jerk for refusing to help my own parents. My dad backed her up, saying it was my duty to take care of them now that they were still my parents and had raised me. That was the last straw. I was furious, but instead of yelling back, I decided to hit where it would really hurt, the truth. I told them I'd be willing to help only if they met one condition. Naturally, my dad wanted to know what it was. So I told them if they wanted anything from me, they'd have to publicly admit, in front of the entire family and mutual friends, that my brother was the one who spread all those lies about me. That he had made up everything and that they had chosen to believe him without question. I wanted them to say it out loud, the truth. I wanted them to humiliate him the same way they humiliated me. They were stunned. My dad pushed back, saying a public admission was unnecessary. My mom tried to guilt me into a private conversation instead, saying we could handle it within the family. But I stood firm. That was the deal, no negotiation. They wanted help? Then they had to own what they'd done. And not quietly behind closed doors. I wanted accountability. I wanted my name cleared the way it had been dragged through the mud. The conversation got heated. My dad started raising his voice, saying he was still my father and that I had an obligation to help. My mom pleaded with me, saying they had spent years raising me and that this wasn't fair. I actually laughed when she said that, the irony too rich to ignore. I reminded them that they hadn't raised me, my grandmother did. She's the one who took me in when they abandoned me. She's the one who believed me. They got more and more worked up, but I didn't budge. I made it crystal clear, if they ever wanted to talk to me again, or ask for anything from me, the truth needed to come out. My brother needed to face consequences. They needed to stop pretending like nothing happened. Since then, they've been blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, voicemails, all ignored. I haven't responded. And honestly, I'm starting to regret even calling them back in the first place. It's like opening that door again gave them the idea that they could just walk back into my life like nothing had happened. Lately, I've been wondering, am I wrong for shutting them out like this? Would I really be a bad person if I didn't help them at all? After everything they did to me, is it so terrible to finally choose myself? The only reason I even gave them that impossible condition was because I knew deep down they'd never meet it. I mean, let's be real, they adore my brother far too much. Even if they finally realized the lies he told, I know they'd never humiliate him the way they once humiliated me. They'd never put him through what I went through. And then today, out of nowhere, my brother texted me. Nasty as usual. It came right after I ignored more missed calls from my parents. He clearly wanted to stir something up. His message read like poison. He said it had been great not having me around. That he'd heard about the crazy ultimatum I gave our parents and that they'd never agree to it. He laughed about how they never loved me and never would, and then, just like that, he admitted it. Over 10 years later, he finally said he made it all up. But instead of apologizing, he told me I should get over it because it was so long ago. He called me selfish for not helping our parents out, then took a cheap shot at my personal life, saying that since I was unmarried and didn't have kids, I had no excuse not to pitch in for their renovations. Reading that felt like getting punched in the chest. His complete disregard for everything I went through, and the way he tried to guilt-trip me using my relationship status, showed just how little he cared. It wasn't just about money for them. It was about control. About pretending nothing ever happened. That text flipped a switch in me. I was done staying silent. I sat down, took a deep breath, and wrote an email to my parents and several close relatives. In it, I laid everything out, the years of being treated like I didn't matter, the way I was punished just for existing differently than my brother. I told them how he spread lies about me in school, how he faked bruises and played the victim, how I was kicked out of the house like trash while he thrived off of everyone's sympathy. I made it clear that if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I might not have survived that time at all. Then I attached a screenshot of the message he just sent me, the one where he finally admitted to lying. I didn't edit it. I didn't add anything. I let his words speak for themselves. That email went out and I'm bracing for the storm. I know it'll stir things up. But I also know it's the truth and the truth matters. It's been a month since I hit send on that email, and, well, it caused an explosion. My parents were slammed with backlash from relatives, many of whom had no idea just how deep the favoritism and mistreatment went. I started getting messages from cousins, uncles, and even distant family members, apologizing for never noticing, for never stepping in. Some of them said they felt ashamed for believing the lies back then. Meanwhile, my parents and brother went off the rails. They sent me a flood of texts, emotionally damaging, angry, and honestly threatening at times. It was getting out of hand. So I contacted a lawyer who immediately sent them a cease and desist notice. The letter made it very clear that if they tried to contact me again, they'd be facing serious legal consequences. That finally shut them up. My grandmother stood by me through it all. She told me she was proud I stood up for myself. Her support meant everything to me. She's the only family I've ever really had, and knowing she's still in my corner makes the rest easier to handle. It's been 2 months now, and for the first time in a long while, life feels calm. Work has been incredible. My content writing business keeps growing, and the invites keep rolling in: interviews, podcasts, seminars. I've become something of a go-to name in my little niche, and I'm proud of how far I've come. And through it all, my bond with my grandmother is stronger than ever. I took a week off recently just to spend some real quality time with her. These days, she's into gardening, and she taught me so much about herbs, flowers, and how she keeps her plants thriving. We cooked meals together, took slow walks, and had those deep, comforting conversations that always seem to heal something inside me. As for my family, nothing. Not a single message since they got that legal notice. And I'm fine with that. I've also started therapy, which has been a huge step for me. It's helping me unpack a lot of the pain and start healing from the damage they left behind. I know I've still got a long road ahead, but for once I'm not walking it alone or carrying their baggage with me. And I think that's where I'll leave it for now.